So, you want to get good at Chronojet? Well, you've come to the right... Chapter 1? No, not yet. Welcome back to Gear Corner, your one-stop shop for all things Gear Chronicle, where today, we're going to be taking a serious look at Chronojet in the standard format. Before we get started, let's get this over quick. If you want to help support this channel, please be sure to check out my page on TCG Player or use code SKYRICH to save 50% on all things Race Energy. Oh, and like and subscribe if you enjoy. Anyways, Chronojet 101. Let's go. Chapter 1. The basics. Ever since day 1, the core of this deck has more or less remained unchanged. For example build, I'm going to show you what I did day 1, because it actually topped the event big enough to be featured here on VG Paradox. If you guys want to see the big breakdown of the event, there's a video for that up there. And of course, a huge shout out to the boys at Kingslayer for holding such a great tournament. I'd love to do another one someday if I could afford another flight out to Florida. Anyways, here's how the deck breaks down. So the red line's very basic. You ride this guy, end up drawing a card and making a crest. Ride this guy and you're able to get a grade 3 when you ride over him, and that's Chronojet Dragon. You know what Chronojet does. If you don't know what Chronojet does, then why are you watching a Gear Chronicle video? Now, what is this crest, you might ask? Well, it's basically a fancy card that these new Stride decks are getting, plus a couple of other cool dudes. It has a couple of different skills to it. The most important two being that we have the ability to stride into our G-Zone, and the little thing that's possibly causing the biggest controversy in the deck. For every card you have face up in your G-Zone, during your turn, your front row is going to gain some extra power. So it starts off, nice little 5k whatever, but like the longer the game goes, the more cards you flip up in your G-Zone, the bigger your field's going to get. So it's very much a scaling deck. The longer the fight goes, the more chance that you have to have very powerful attacks. As for the rest of what you're seeing, you've got your Ballies that let you draw a card when you stride and get you the ability to get plus 10 if your card goes back to deck. You got this boy who goes back to deck after he attacks and lets you get a grade 1 out of your deck to the back row circles. This is your 10k to 15k guard based on if you're GB or not. This boy helps you cycle out your Chronojets. This is debatably the best card in the deck. It's a free draw and gives you plus 5, making her 13k. I lied, this is the best card in the deck. This is the one time you will ever hear me talk about Brainwash Ruler. I know it's a staple in like every Darkseid deck supposedly, but this is the one where it matters for some weird reason. Basically, he has two skills. First of all, when you play Soul Charge 1, and when you Soul Charge, if you happen to be a grade 3 or greater, he gets plus 5. Therefore making him kind of like Dorian the Thruster if you guys remember old school Vanguard. However, this Dorian is an 8k who is, yeah, That said, I have theory that he is not as important as you think he is, just because of that simple being tied to grade 3 thing, which means you can't use him in the first 2 turns, and ultimately, that's where you want to have a lot of your early pressure to make your late game matter a lot more. Then you've got some other cards that you can subsidize with, but I'll talk about this more in the next chapter. Of course, trigger lineup, standard 8 crit, over trigger, and for heals, you have your choice of special heal triggers in the deck. I've been like the newest one that comes out, just because it helps you out if you go second. And for your off trigger, I'm running draws in this original build, this day 1 build, but I did ultimately decide on front later down the line because you do intend to have a 4 attack pattern. Thanks to Strides. So you know how earlier I talked about the crest giving you the power to go into grade 4? And this guy has ability that says when you go into grade 4 you get a cool skill. That's what these are for. Right now we only have 2 strides in standard, but they both have their own usage to them. Next stage is going to be a restander on your Vanguard. After he attacks, you're able to pay the cost and go back into Chronojet at stand. This is great because Chronojet's GB2 does have a guard restrict on him where your opponent can only call trigger units. This is good. Especially because at GB2 you're already be at plus 15 by the time you go into your second stride next stage. So in theory, with next stage plus him, he's plus 20. He's a 33k, only triggers please. Then your other strides can give you 4 attacks a different way because when he attacks, you shove one of your cards back in the deck and are able to call one card that's a grade higher. Then give a card power. Doesn't have to be the card you called. You can give him the power, you can give someone else power. There are ways to use them. But in short, you can combo this with like a grade 1 to go into a grade 2. You can use the crest to manipulate your grade 3s and the grade 0s. Or you can just call a grade 0 and put it back in deck. This is stupid. The fact that you can actually spin your heals and over triggers back to deck is ridiculous. And honestly, it's not necessarily a bad idea too, because once you do have a couple of stacks on your crest, those triggers will be swinging for like 15, 20k power on their own. So with the general flow of this deck, you're going to be putting cards back in deck, making 4 attacks a turn, and ramping up the pressure as you go on. The only downside to this is because of the way Generation Break works, that you have to be in stride or have cards in your G zone, you're going to be a little slow in the first few turns of the game. Because that, a good way to counteract the deck is unfortunately to grade 2 game it. However, with stride rules, as long as you're on grade 3-4 turn, you can go ahead and go for it. So, honestly, like, all you need to do is get to grade 3 and survive for a turn. Then, optimally, you do want to go second, just because not only will you be able to stride right away, but on your turn 1, you not only draw a card from your starter, but you also draw a card from his abilities. So you effectively draw 2 cards and get your free crest. So, now that you guys have the basics down, let's all move down to something a little more advanced. Chapter 2. That's my build right now. Alright, it's time to get spicy. This is the build that I've been working on ever since set 10 dropped, which you may have heard me hinting at during some of my previous deck profiles, which you should totally check out because Dragon's Masquerade has a bunch of interesting toys to mess around with for everyone. As for this, well, let's just say the video took so long that a new set with even more toys dropped. But we'll get to those. Chapter 3. I said a little bit. For the most part, the core of this deck is still generally the same. You still have the exact same ride line. I haven't shown this off yet. This was signed by Dr. O. You'll got your jets, your upstreams, your perfect guards, including one of these in case you have a mirror match for another grade 4 deck, your searchers for your grade 3s, your soul charge engine, your GGs, and triggers are generally lots of crits, Nova trigger, front side mention for your 4 attacks, and some heals. A lot of times you'll be seeing a lot of people running your 2 Chronojets plus your off grade 3. Basically just because your Steam Breath has the ability to grab Chronojet not only from your deck but from your drop zone, and you only need him specifically to stride into the boy right there. However, the way I have this build structured, I am maxing out my Chronojets so I can add more cards to search off of John Cena. Because I'm not running another grade 3 rear guard. The other grade 3 I'm running this deck is an order. Here's 3 of them. This thing is Spiritual Body Compensation. You know that order for Stoke that lets you Soul Blast, call a card from your drop zone and get +5? That's this, but Soul Charge. This is important for 2 reasons. First of all, helps build up your soul for things like GG and stuff. Second of all, helps build up your soul for things like Brainwash Swirler. Effectively, this will make an 18k Swirler on its own because you can call out a Swirler, give it +5, and Swirler activates, gets another +5, or if Swirl's already on the board, it's only pumps up more. There are other things that you can do with this. For example, this is grade 3, so you use it as stride fodder. And if you have a decent amount of stuff in your soul, you can always tutor around with it. It helps to make a board again after you've been controlled. Generally, it's a really good card. Like, I'm only running 3 in here because it's an order, which does make it a little more awkward. I mean, you're basically running 7 6 grade 3s anyway, so here's your 6 grade 3s. This one's an order. For that reason, we do max out the Chronojet just so you'll have something to search with grade 2 in the ride line, and of course increasing your chances with Steam Breath to get cards back from your drop zone. Speaking of Swirler, I've been running his best friend for a while now, and that is the Mason Magician. Previously I was running 3 copies of it, but because of other things in the deck I had to move it down to 2. She has a really basic skill that says, on attack you have the option to Soul Charge. Pretty simple. That Soul means a couple things, like say you got your GG, you got your Swirler, and you got this card now. So a couple things you can combo with it. It's really good. Pop this down on a grade 3 turn while if you went first and you just make big numbers. You go swirl, meow, swirl, meow, swirl. I'll talk about that more in combos. Last tech. There she is. There she is. Around, you might be asking, why are you running the Persona Ride card in a deck that cannot Persona Ride? We ignore that sentence. We're gonna look at the first one. It says with discard during the ride phase. You can Soul Blast a card, Sherman Bomb deck, and draw a card. This is going to give you extra draws during your rides, your first 2 rides. And little known fact, you know when you do this guy and you're like, oh hey, stride generation zone, meow. That's technically during the ride phases when you stride. So you can still ditch her during your stride in order to draw a card. Really good. If you get lucky, top deck this thing while going second. You're basically going to drop this turn 1. Say, oh hey, I'm going to drop the starter. I'm going to drop the Mason Gear. I'm going to drop this. Thank you for leaving me +3 cards by going second, and still giving me the ability to stride stuff. Then, of course, your G zone literally can't change because we only have these 2 cards. One thing I will go into now, though, before we go into combos, is that whether you go into this or this after your first stride is going to matter kind of what your opponent's hand is and how they can recover from stuff. For example, if you know they have a small hand and they're at like 4 or 5 damage, of course you go next stage. Why would you not reset it into your Guard Strike? However, if they have like, I think we decided it was 8-9 plus, and they're at maybe a lower damage count, or you know they have a lot of rear guards that can snipe, I go into this point, but I go, ho, what up? You know how you got the crest that gives you +5 for every card face up? Then I'm gonna give you +5 for every card face up. I'm like a big swing to eat up all the cards in your hand. Really good. Either way you gain 4 attacks, but it just depends on the situation which one you want to go into. Alright, fine. We'll talk about Festival Collection. Tony, I want you to take this one. You do it. The future is now. Like I said, in the time between recording all those set 10 deck videos to lead up to this promised Chronojet video, a new set came out. Not a big boy set filled with support for all the new ride lines, but it's kind of like a reprint set with a few new toys. Chronojet technically got 40s, and while I haven't been able to pull any of them or pick up any of them yet for actual testing, grab some Raise Energy with code SkyRidge and check out my page on TCG Player so I can afford them. I'm still gonna discuss this foursome. Okay, I lied. This one doesn't really vibe. In theory, it searched for 2 grade 3s, which is great for Stride Fodder, but it does force a call and you only get to grab units. This helps for things like Bally with his big boy swings once you start spinning cards, or a couple of other cards I'll mention in another chapter, but for this deck we generally want to keep grade 3s in hand, not in the field, just when we thought we were safe. We got not 1, but 2 new Cray generic overtriggers. Blue is definitely the tamer of the duo, but grabbing a free card from your drop zone is always good, and it does give something a crit. Red boy, that's one you gotta watch out for. This thing either gives you a free restanding rear guard, or if you don't have one, lets you place a card down from your hand to get that extra attack. Although your attack sequence in this deck may not favor it at times due to things like upstream, don't forget that you're already getting an average of 4 swings per turn. With the scaling power thanks to Crest, and for every attack mattering in this deck, adding a 5th is not a bad thing if you don't want the wonder that is Darkseid's permanent Force 3 on Vanguard. Finally, every nation got a brand new grade 3 cycle card. These things both have an effect that increases the power and shield to neutralize the defensive trigger, and a second effect that basically includes getting rid of your overtrigger because it's funny. Ours lets you shove rear guard into soul to retire a card, then if you do get over that overtrigger, you're going to get Chronojet's GB2 Guard Restrict. In other words, you feed things like GG in order to have a rear guard Chronojet. This is kind of yummy if you do have room for it, so I definitely would consider using this for those games where you draw your overtrigger and don't Fate Rider back in your deck. Alright, time for the fun stuff. This chapter will be sponsored by combos. If I had any in the pantry, or if I can magically get combos to sponsor a video. Combos! Going into the combos and the flow of how this deck starts working, the grade 1s are honestly the heart and soul of this deck. Whether it be things like Brainwash for earlier, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and building up soul for everything else, or of course using that soul for things like GG or Gungan Ram, who's also a soul charger. Both these cards do let you draw, and effectively if you open up these 2 on turn 1, it's going to go plop plop, and then you build up another soul for this, which you then use for this immediately to draw another card, while getting up to 3 attacks. You go meow meow meow. This gives you a very aggressive first turn, whether it be on your grade 1 if you went second, or if you went first, you can still do it on grade 2, where you have another soul, so you could activate him instead of that if you want to. I don't know. In order to get to these good cards, you do have quite a bit of a few options. First of all, we have this boy, the classic one that comes with the deck. After he attacks, he goes back in, and you're able to grab a grade 1 out of your deck and put it in the rear guard circle. It does have to go to back, which kind of sucks, because you can't just like, haha, I'm got another free attack. But I mean, if you did that, honestly, the deck would be even more broken, but you would have thought a little bit at least. Of course, another way to get out during battle phase is everyone's favorite Stride, Fate Rider Dragon, who says when he attacks, you can counterblast 1, flip up a Stride thingy, and then you can take any card, put it back in deck, and call it something that's 1 grade higher. So in this case, you're going to be able to shove a grade 0 or a grade 3 in deck. Thanks to this thing, changing your grade 3s to grade 0s at the beginning of your route phase. However, you're not going to want to do that. What you want to do is put one of these bad boys in. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the only deck in the game, well, besides like Alma Jester, I guess, where opening triggers is not a bad idea. If you're on a second plus stride turn, where these actually have power, you could field them and swing for like 15 or whatever before putting it back in deck. Or if you draw on turn stride, you can do some super like this, where you swing in for a nice 10, 15, 20. This goes back to deck, get the thing out here, and then activate Fate Rider with a boost, put that back in, get another thing up here. In addition to that, if you do want Brainwash as your strat, you do have two other best friends right here. And that is, number one, the order I talked about recently. One is you Soul Charge 1 and then call a card with +5. Well, guess what this? He likes it when you Soul Charge. So you effectively can say, wee! Okay, I'm gonna get Soul Charge. There it goes. Meow, meow, meow. Oh, he's gonna get +5 because Soul Charge. By the way, call a card out, Soul. Wee! Oh, hey, it's the broken thing! Honestly, oh no, I Soul Charged a trigger, call a trigger. He's still a 10k. He could still hit rear guards from this part. And for the last way to pump up your boy, we do have Amazing Magician, who, like I said, when she swings, you're able to Soul Charge. Guess what that's gonna do? Go in under the card, please. +5. Then the final thing I'm going to show off is another grade 1 combo if you want to run the spoilers, and that is these two kids. The Meow Meow and the Woof Woof. I don't know why they're animal noises. So this thing, the grade 1 from the Dreadful deck, when he attacks or boosts, he's going to get a +5 and then go hide into the soul. This makes him a very trusty 13k. It's not restricted to anything, so you just do it right away and start ramping up the pressure. And in combo with this thing, I'm about to mention spoilers, I'm about to mention next chapter on hit pressure is good. If he hits a thing that he boosts, you're able to call a grade 1 out of soul. For real, you might say. If you don't have a soul, what's he gonna do? And I point at this card and I'm like, you know how I just said it goes in the soul? Vanguard Chain's weird. Effectively go but up. Oh hey, he hit. Pop goes Weasel. Guess who's back? Now you can do like attack with him again, or Fate Rider and do the thing where he goes back into grade 3 and you can do the thing. It's combos. That's the entire point of the section, combos. Look, all I'm saying is if you can't afford things off my TCG player page, there are still options. Chapter 5, budget. So what about all those cool kids that can't afford spoiler? Here's some alternatives. For the sake of building soulful cards like GG Art and Argandia, we do have a couple of other options. First off, Gungadram is not honestly that expensive, especially with the reprint from Festival Collection happening. Unless you want to SP out the deck like a true Gear Chronicle main, these things are only a couple bucks. So there's your Soul Charge right there. It has a Soul Blast 3 to draw card on it, which also doubles up on your draw power like GG. There's also Mikani as an option too, but like honestly, unless you want to run grade 3 Mikani as your off grade 3 and have some really weird Soul Charge RNG happening, then there are things like Falcate and Zargon that take cards from the back from the drop zone, or you could use Me the Time Jarrett Dragon or Silverthorn's Rising Dragon in order to shove a card from your hand into Soul and draw another card, which basically gives you an insane cycle draw engine in combo with things like your favorite Soul Blasting grade 1s. Going back to Zargon though, on hit pressure is huge. Because you can be getting giant numbers and guard restrict later in the game, your opponent may just try to guard early, which digs a lot of resources out of their hand and stops them from doing things with their counter blast early on. If you're trying to go for this kind of limitation strats, then having things that have on hit pressure make them want to guard even more, so you won't get you cool effects on top of that. And of course, once the game starts scaling with your crest, all those on hits are going to be getting bigger and bigger and scarier to guard, so your opponent's probably going to be wasting a lot of cards in hand to stop them, or giving you a lot of cool effects if they don't. Personally, I'd recommend Term Fracture Dragon in order to double up on your whole cycle draw hand soul skills if you use something like a Time Jarrett Dragon. Dare gives you counterblast to double up on your control, or Selfish Engraver for resource management, even though it goes to soul in order to give you that counter charge, so it's kind of redundant. But hey, that's fine. That's what the order I mentioned earlier is for. You just recycle your soul and rebuild board with a slight power boost. And that's it for class today. Did you guys learn anything new? Did I somehow forget something in this giant Gear Chronicle seminar? Comment it down below if you did. And if you enjoyed this kind of video, make sure to hit that subscribe button while you're down there. Until next time, always embrace the infinite. Get it? I said time because this is a time clan. This is Gear Chronicle. This is a time clan. It's time travel, steampunk, and sweat. Alright, that's long enough. We're done. Bye-bye.